Grace's trembling fingers unfolded the small note left on her table, the kind of note a son writes in a hurry, without thinking what it might do to a mother's heart. She read the first line and her breath caught. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the chair to stay upright. For a moment the world around her faded. All she could hear was her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. The narrator's voice breaks in. This note, written by her only son, would change everything she believed about love, sacrifice, and family. The moment freezes there, holding the audience in the tension of those words, making them wonder what a child could possibly write to bring his mother to her knees. The story steps back to show the world Grace comes from her quiet apartment, her framed photos, the life of a woman who gave everything yet asked for nothing. Her son David was the center of her universe from the day he was born. She had lived her entire life believing that love is shown not through big speeches, but through small sacrifices, the land she sold so he could study engineering, the jewelry she pawned to pay for his wedding, the long nights she spent sewing uniforms just to keep the lights burning for him. She cherished every moment she got with him, whether it was a quick hug, a smile on a busy day, or her little granddaughter Emma waving to her from the porch. She never imagined that one day, all those years of giving would be answered with a note so cold, so unexpected, that it would bring her to the ground. And as this video begins, we walk step by step into the life, love, and heartbreak of a mother who never thought her own child would write words that would shatter her spirit. Grace's life had never been easy, but she had made peace with that long ago. She grew up in a small farmhouse where hard work wasn't just a habit, it was survival. So when she married her husband, Mark, and they had their only child, David, she carried those same values with her. She believed that the true measure of love wasn't in the words you spoke, but in the things you carried silently so the people you loved didn't have to. When Mark passed away unexpectedly, leaving her alone with a young son, Grace didn't break. She simply tightened her grip on life and decided that David would never feel the emptiness she was feeling. Not if she could help it. She took up sewing jobs, from home uniforms, curtains, anything she could stitch. At night, when David slept, she would sit by the dim yellow lamp, guiding fabric beneath her needle. Some nights her fingers bled, but she kept going. She'd look over at her sleeping son and whisper, "This is for you, my boy." Years went by, and her sacrifices multiplied. When David reached the age where he dreamed of becoming an engineer, Grace knew the family land, her last inheritance, was the only way to support his education. The land that held her father's memories, the land she used to run across as a child, the land she wished could stay in the family forever. But she didn't hesitate. She signed the papers with a smile, telling David, "Go do what I never could." She remembered the day she pawned her wedding jewelry, her mother's gold bangles, her own necklace from her wedding day. She walked out of the pawn shop feeling strangely light, not because she had money, but because she was carrying the hope of her son's future. During David's wedding preparations, when expenses kept rising, she quietly stepped in. Lisa, the bride, never knew the extent of Grace's sacrifices. Grace didn't tell anyone. She didn't want to embarrass the young couple or make them feel indebted. Even after David married and moved into a beautiful suburban home, Grace continued to help whenever she could. She would drop by with homemade meals, fresh bread, or little wear-upon clothes for her granddaughter, Emma. She cherished the moments when Emma's tiny arms wrapped around her neck. Those hugs made every hardship worthwhile. Grace believed that her sacrifices would naturally return in the form of love, respect, and closeness. She never asked for gifts or attention. A simple visit or a warm conversation was enough. She thought the bond between a mother and son only grew deeper with age. But she noticed small signs: David's hurried calls, the way Lisa seemed distant when she visited, the subtle shift in the atmosphere the moment she stepped inside their house. Still, Grace brushed aside every worry. She told herself, they're young, they're busy. They'll understand when they're older. She trusted time, trusted patience, trusted love. She didn't know that a storm quiet, invisible, was gathering in the very family she had given everything to. And it was waiting for the perfect moment to break, shattering decades of sacrifice with just a few written words. The evening of David and Lisa's 10th wedding anniversary was meant to be special. Grace had circled the date on her calendar weeks ago. She had spent days preparing a meaningful gift, a gold locket that once belonged to her mother. She polished it carefully, rubbed every tiny engraving with soft cloth, and whispered memories into it. She imagined Lisa's surprised smile, David's warm gratitude, and maybe even Emma's little hands reaching out to hold it. She imagined laughter, warmth, a family celebrating together. She arrived at their house a bit earlier than the invitation time. Grace always believed in helping. Arriving early meant she could assist with the final touches, arranging plates, setting tables, carrying trays. It made her feel included, important, part of the family. But the moment she stepped onto the porch, she sensed something different. The fairy lights were dazzling, music floated through the air, and the noise of guests' laughter spilled onto the lawn. Grace stood there with her small velvet box, her heart light and hopeful. David spotted her first. He approached with a smile, but it wasn't the warm, excited smile she remembered from his younger years. It was hurried, like a man with too much on his plate. "Mom, you're early," he said lightly. Not harshly, but with a tone that hinted inconvenience. Grace returned his smile. "I thought I could help set up. Everything's mostly done," he replied while glancing toward the crowd. It was a small thing, but Grace felt the brief sting. She shook it off. He was busy, she understood. Inside, the house looked beautiful: soft lights, elegant decorations, a long table filled with fancy food she didn't recognize. She felt proud of her son's successes, proud of how far he had come. Suddenly, Lisa appeared, stunning in a shimmering red dress. Her phone was pressed to her ear, her face painted with the glow of excitement and stress. When she ended the call, her eyes landed on Grace. "Oh, Grace," she said, forcing a smile. "We're good here. Everything's catered." Grace held up the velvet box slightly. "I brought a little something." Lisa's eyes flicked toward the box, but before Grace could finish, another guest approached, pulling Lisa back into conversation. Grace stood there, invisible in the crowd. As the evening went on, Grace found herself drifting between corners, smiling politely, but not truly belonging. She watched David laughing with friends, Lisa posing for photos, everyone clinking glasses. No one noticed her quiet presence. She placed the velvet box gently on the gift table, whispering, "Happy anniversary," though no one heard. When she realized she was more of a guest than a mother, she slipped out quietly, unnoticed. The party lights shimmered behind her like a world she no longer fit into. The morning sunlight filtered through Grace's thin curtains as she sipped her tea, replaying last night in her mind. She told herself she was overthinking. Maybe David truly was just busy. Maybe Lisa wasn't trying to be distant. Maybe everything was fine. She clung to those thoughts like lifelines. Her phone buzzed. A message from David. "Mom, can you come over today? We need to talk." Her heart tightened. "We need to talk" rarely meant anything good. Still, she grabbed her shawl and left. When she arrived at their house, the porch light, the one Emma usually waved from, was off. The door was unlocked. Grace stepped inside, calling softly, "David," no answer. She walked to the living room and froze. A single note lay on the coffee table. Her name written on top. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. "Mom, please stop coming without telling us. It stresses Lisa. We appreciate everything you did, but we're busy now. Don't take it the wrong way, David." The room tilted. The words pierced deeper than any blade. She whispered, "I stressed them," her knees weakened. She reached for the edge of the sofa but missed, falling hard to the floor. The note fluttered beside her, its message louder than the silence filling the house. Grace pressed a hand to her chest. Decades of sacrifice, sold land, pawned jewelry, sleepless nights reduced to a polite dismissal. The words "don't take it the wrong way" echoed painfully. Was she truly a burden? Had she mistaken her son's quietness for respect? Had she missed signs of growing distance? As she sat trembling on the cold floor, memories flashed: David's childhood, laughter, his graduation, his wedding day. Every scene of joy was tied to something she had given up. Every milestone had a piece of her heart stitched into it. She realized then that love was not always repaid with love. Sometimes it was repaid with silence. Sometimes with distance. Sometimes with a note written in haste, but capable of breaking a heart built over 75 years. Grace wiped her tears, folded the note, and stood slowly. She placed it in her bag not because she wanted to remember it, but because it reminded her of a truth she had avoided for years. She wasn't needed. Not by the son she raised, not by the home she helped build, not by the family she once dreamed of being part of. And that painful realization would change everything. Grace left the house silently that day, her steps slow, her heart heavier than ever before. The world outside was bright and sunny, mocking the storm inside her. She walked past children playing, neighbors chatting, dogs barking, life moving forward, unaware of the shattering inside her chest. When she reached her small apartment, she sank onto the couch and let the tears flow freely, something she rarely allowed herself to do. For 2 days, she didn't visit, didn't call, didn't even send a message. She moved through her rooms quietly, noticing things she had overlooked: her old books, her untouched knitting basket, the photo of her parents on the shelf. She realized she had spent her entire life living for others, especially for David. She had forgotten to live for herself. On the 3rd morning, she woke up with a strange clarity. The ache was still there, but it no longer controlled her breathing. She looked in the mirror and whispered, "You matter too." It felt strange, saying it aloud. But it was a start. She began small. She visited a local park, sat on a bench, and breathed the fresh air. She joined a senior activity group where older women shared stories and laughter. For the first time in years, she let herself enjoy things without thinking how they would benefit someone else. She cooked meals she liked, not the ones she thought David preferred. She found old letters from Mark, reminding her of a time when she was loved wholeheartedly. As weeks passed, David began to notice the distance. Grace wasn't dropping by. She wasn't bringing food. She wasn't calling to ask about Emma. At first, he assumed she was busy. But Lisa noticed too. "Your mom hasn't visited in a while," she said one evening. Did something happen? Something shifted in David's eyes, then an uncomfortable question rising inside him. He found the velvet locket still unopened in a drawer. Guilt washed over him. Memories of his mother flashed: the night she stayed up sewing, the pride in her eyes when he graduated, the joy when Emma hugged her. He realized he had taken her for granted, assumed she'd always be there, always adjusting, always giving. One morning, David went to Grace's apartment. When she opened the door, he saw a different version of his mother, not broken, but distant. Not angry, but tired. "Mom, why didn't you come?" he asked softly. Grace looked at him with gentle, wounded eyes. "You asked me not to," she replied simply. The simplicity of her answer hit him harder than any accusation. He apologized haltingly, sincerely trying to bridge the gap his words had created. Lisa joined later, admitting she never meant to push Grace away. They promised to do better, to make space for her, to show her the love she had long given without return. Grace forgave them. She always would. But something inside her had shifted forever. She had learned the hardest truth: you cannot make people value you, but you can learn to value yourself. And from that moment on, Grace's life was no longer built solely around giving. It was built on balance, loving others while loving herself too. A bittersweet ending, but a powerful one. Grace stood by her window that evening, watching the sun set behind the rooftops. The sky glowed with shades of orange and pink colors she had rarely stopped to notice all these years. For the first time in a long while, her heart felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had learned to breathe again, to live again, to value herself beyond what she offered others. Behind her, the room felt warm, filled with little reminders of a life she had once pushed aside: her books, her knitting. The framed photo of Mark smiling at her as if proud of the woman she had finally become. A gentle knock broke the silence. When Grace opened the door, she found David and Emma standing there. Not with gifts. Not with excuses. But with sincerity. Emma ran into her arms, giggling, "Grandma, we missed you." David's eyes were filled with something Grace hadn't seen in years: true understanding. He held out the velvet box she had gifted them. "Mom," he said softly, "we're sorry for not seeing everything you did, everything you gave. We want you with us. Not out of obligation, but because we truly want you there." Grace smiled, touched the box, and whispered, "I forgive you," and she did. Because forgiveness was not weakness, it was her strength. The three of them stood together for a long moment, a family quietly mending its broken pieces, not perfectly, but honestly. And sometimes honesty was enough. As the narrator's voice returns, the scene fades into a soft montage: Grace laughing with Emma, David visiting more often, Grace taking part in her new hobbies, a life of balance taking shape. The narrator says, parents don't need grand gestures. They don't need luxury gifts. All they truly want is respect, a little time, and the feeling that they still matter. Before life moves too fast, before misunderstandings become regrets, remind them of their importance. Tell them they are not a burden. Tell them they are loved. The video's music softens as the final message appears on screen. Value your parents before the moment to do so becomes a memory. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video. Share it with someone who needs this message today. And if you want more emotional, meaningful stories just like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Thank you for watching, and take a moment today to call someone who raised you with love.